Daleks.
I like that. Artificial intelligence. What do you call it? Because I started at 10 years old, the first episode. I watched every Doctor Who's fact and see who get the most facts. So I won. He fell behind. His name was, I wrote the plots of every single episode out from memory. Till we finally, by the Reign of Terror, on side, and it played for 15 minutes. So if you look at my notes for Reign of Terror Part 5, it said, so nothing was accurate. And that's the way I did it every week until the chase. My cousin Marcia had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. She said I could have it. And she heard in the books. And then when they finished, when I transcribed them, I wiped them off and re-recorded them. I couldn't afford to keep buying tapes. I wish I had, but I couldn't. At that time, I've got a lot I kept in the end. But at first, I had to wipe them off. Anyway, in doing so, I transcribed every word. So, and for instance, I'm watching the screen. If Stephen went to the door on the left, I wrote down Stephen Lee's left in my notes. So when I wrote it out, every single movement is accurate and more accurate than the camera scripts.
I was going to say, this is like stage directions or a camera script.
But more, yes, but camera scripts got changed in the studio in practicality.
Of course.
And people, Patrick Troughton, particularly ad-lib, didn't stick to the script. Whereas I wrote every word down that was on the TV. So by the time we got to Power of the Daleks, particularly, there were 60 pages per episode. And they had 60 or 70 pages an episode. So I carried on all the way up to the Abominable Snowman. It might be the actor. Yeah. But I carried on till then. But thrown some of the tapes out, I've thrown my notes out, I'd lost interest for a while. I messed it all up. For a very short time, I lost my love of the show. And then it came back. John Pertwee. I've got my notes. I've still got them here upstairs. The original notes, scribble notes. Spearhead from Space to Salona's Ambassador of Death. Pages and pages, scribble notes and stage direction.
Reams and reams of it.
And pages, and of course, audio recordings. But now, you know, we've got them all, so it doesn't matter. But it did then. Made me always want to see it again. And I always thought one day the BBC will start at the beginning and repeat all of them. I always thought that, never knowing they've been destroying them all the time. And it wasn't until 1978 or 76, really, we found out that from Tony Cash, who made the Who's Doctor Who documentary, we discovered how many had been destroyed. Now,
because, Ian, we assume that the people who make this stuff love it and cherish it the way that we do, don't we?
Yeah, we assume that, but it's not true. Even in Barry Letts even went to his head of department and he said, I want to keep one particular story, which is the demons, because Guy Leopold was his two sons, Guy and Leopold. That's why it's the fake name.
Oh, is that where the name came from?
Yeah, Guy Letts and Leopold Letts. Barry wrote the story himself. And because he's the producer, he can't be seen to writing it. So he wrote it under his son's two Christian names. So
I knew that Barry had written it, but I had no idea where he got the name from.
Guy Leopold. So he went to Ronnie Marsh, head of department, said, please preserve this story in the archives. And Ronnie Marsh just preserved part 4, and the rest were wiped. Barry told me how upset he was by that. Because at that time, remember, there was only a BBC black and white tele-recording. There were no colour copies. I was the first person in history to be allowed to buy private Doctor Who's, have a contract with the BBC, giving me permission to own Doctor Who, and have it privately. So I bought, the first thing we bought was Frontier in Space. When I say we, I couldn't afford it all. A few friends chipped in a bit.
Clubbed together.
But I paid for over 50% of it. So Frontier in Space, they wouldn't sell us for less than $3,000. That was the price. We assumed it was still in colour, so we paid $3,000 and bought it. Then they come back and they said, we've wiped parts 1, 2, 3, and 6. We've only got parts 4 and 5. But we do have a black and white recording of it. So I said, all right, that's better than nothing. At that time, you see, stories like the Sea Devils were shown all over the world. But Frontier in Space had never been shown anywhere. Not anywhere.
Oh, so, I had wondered why that one in particular.
That's why we wanted that one in particular, because we couldn't get it from anywhere else. The only way to see it. And I personally loved it. My favourite Pertwee. So we paid £3,000. That's 500 an episode. Now, if you think about how much people pay now for these Blu-rays, I paid £3,000 for one story. And when I got it, and I
it was in black and white.
I want to buy a black and white Heart Royal Troughton. They said, until you get your foot in the door, you can't. We have a 7-year rule. We can't sell older than 7 years. Once I bought that, heaven and earth was moved. There was a guy called David Casey and a wonderful guy called John Bridger at the BBC Film Library sales who organised me to go to the old one. So before they let me see what BBC Enterprises had in their vault, I had to buy all the BBC ones that were on black and white film prints. They had oddments. They had the whole of An Unearthly Child, all 4 parts. But then they had part 5 of Keys of Mariners, part 3 of the Space Museum, part 2 of the Time Meddler, just odd episodes of stories. So I had to buy all of those. I had to spend, again, I had to pull together the people who spent 100 grand on buying these episodes. If we hadn't spent the 100 grand, you would have 170 episodes missing now, we calculated. But only by buying them was I able to stop the destruction. You see, if I hadn't been a customer buying them, I would have had no possible clout to be able to say, stop the Daleks being destroyed. Because when we finally got to Villiers House, whereas the film library had odd 1 episode, you understand what I mean? The Invasion had 6 of them, parts 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. They didn't have 1 and 4. They hadn't kept full stories. They had no remit to keep the stories. So by the time I was allowed into Villiers House to see what was there and buy what was missing, that's when the Daleks all the cans for the first Dalek story had already been junked, and the actual cans were on the floor. There was this thick white gaffer tape that thick, wrapped all around them, and a big rubber stamp on them in red, withdrawn, deaccessioned, and junked. That's a 3-tier process. Withdrawn means withdrawn from sales, third world countries overseas. Deaccessioned means the cards removed from the accessions trade. Accessions was the word to access each of the film prints and their spool number. So withdrawn, deaccession, and junked meant thrown in the skip. Now, they were marked withdrawn, deaccession, and junked because the kid who let us in, Perry, was 18 years old. Said, I'm supposed to throw that in the skip this afternoon, he said. And I took the tape, I ripped off the tape and put it back on the shelf. He said, you can't do that, I'll get fired. It's more than my job's worth. And I said, who told you to junk them? He says, Pamela Nash. She's just down the corridor, third door on the left or something like that. So me and John Bridger went to see Pamela Nash. And John Bridger said, this is Ian Levine, he's buying these episodes. She says, well, how does that concern me? And I said, you were destroying this first Dalek story. She said, they're black and white prints, no one wants them, the rights have run out. I said, please don't destroy them. She said, don't you dare tell me how to do my job. John says, look, please, he wants to buy these stories. Please don't. She said, you're nothing to me. She was very rude and very abrasive. So John said, I have an idea. There's a new girl over at Brentford Film Library called Sue Malden. She's only been in the job for 1 month. She will at least stop these being destroyed if we're quick enough. Because when Perry said, she told him to destroy them today. She went back in the office after we left, said, destroy them now. We couldn't have saved them. But he said he would try to hold off destroying them until we got back. We raced like the clappers, actually running through red lights and stuff on the road to get back to the Brentford. We're in Ealing, you see, and Brentford is a good 15, 20 minutes away. So to get back to the Brentford Film Library, rush into the office. Sue Mulder's got a lovely quote on that interview me and her did online. If you look, Ian Levine, Sue Mulder, what we did, she said, I was in shock. These 2 sweaty guys come running into my office babbling. I didn't know what the hell was going on. She remembered it. Anyway, they're going to destroy the first appearance of the Daleks. She typed out a letter to Pamela Nash, the BBC Enterprises. Please take John Bridger and Ian Levine as my representatives. Please do not destroy any more Doctor Who's. We need them for the library. Please, please do not destroy these cans. I'll be down later in the week. And we signed Sue Mulder, archivist. We again drove back to Ealing, again running red lights, risking all sorts of chances to get quick.
This is why, Ian, this is why I call you the unstoppable Ian Levine.
So we run to her office and we put the letter down in front of her.
Yes.
Glared at me as if I killed her cat. She was so angry. She said, how dare you interfere? And John Bridger said, look, please don't be upset. We're trying to save these. And here, the BBC Library needs them. Please don't destroy them. She had no choice. In the meantime, her personal assistant, Enid, was so angry at her for destroying so many Doctor Who's that she took War Games, the Dominators, and the Crotons and gave them to the BFI, National Film Theatre, to store them. That's why they still exist. They've been junked, but she gave them her sister. Again, she got told off for it. She got really told off for doing it. Pamela Nash was almost fired her over it, but she had no right to give them to the BFI. We wouldn't have any War Games if she hadn't.
See, I do wonder, Ian, because obviously these stories, we hear drips and drops of them, and there's so many things about you that there's lots of myths about you, popular myths, some of which I'm sure aren't even true.
Our witnesses, Sue Mulden bore witness with me on stage, and John Bridger, I can find him because Jane Judge says she knows him. I can find him.
We'll have to try and get Sue on one of the times. I can't imagine what she must think of all of this, that she's still talking about it all these decades on.
She made it her mission to save Doctor Who. She picked one program to champion. That was it, because of what I'd brought. She didn't know they were being destroyed, and she wouldn't.
Thank heaven for her. Yeah.
Perry said Pamela Nash has got all the black and white Doctor Who's from the 60s down, earmarked to be destroyed in the next month.
Wow.
Had I not been there, okay, in my life I've said 21 Doctor Who stories and brought them back to the BBC. 7 of those are the Daleks, and I claim that was mine. But had I not done that, they would have destroyed all those others. And I calculated, apart from the 20 odd I returned, I think you'd be missing 172 episodes now.
Well, Ian, it would have, surely if you hadn't have done that as well, not only would more have gone, but the process would have accelerated as well.
Yes. That's the point. Pamela Nash was a stickler for bureaucracy. She didn't want any BBC programme to fall into the public's hands. She couldn't envision. I actually said, here's my famous quote to her, which I've used thousands of times since. One day you'll be able to go into WH Smith or Woolworths and buy these off the shelves. Now, the funny thing is, WH Smith and Woolworths all went bust, but the principle of going to shop buying them was true. When Tomb of the Simon came back from Hong Kong, it went to #1 on the video chart. I was beating every movie and everything. You know, beating Aliens.
And you know where I picked up my copy of Tomb of the Cybermen from? From my local Woolworths scene.
Yeah, there you go.
I remember doing it.
And to answer that pillock dickhead Richard Bignell, who's a pathological liar and only goes on what's on paper, will not believe a word I say, who's made it his life's mission to mock me and to discredit me and to actually point it out to him. When Adam Lee of the Film Library got back Tomb of the Simon, I was at a music business convention in France. I believe it was January 1991, I think. It was certainly January. It was called Midem, a music thing in Cannes. Every year I went, in the part of my business. In fact, I came to save the Doctor Who's. I'll tell you that story. Anyway, but Adam Lee from the Film Library phoned me up.
Yeah.
Mobile. He says, Ian, are you sitting down? I said, yes. I said, he's got some unbelievable news you won't believe. Do you remember years ago you sent telexes out to all those countries? I said, yes, go on. And he said, Tomb of the Simon just come back from Hong Kong, and they said to me that it was because they remember that telex. So because he's there, and he was the film library chief archivist of the library. How dare Richard Bignell? How dare you, you bastard? How dare you claim that I made this up? How dare you?
But going back to your relationship with this,
constantly abuses me on Twitter. He thinks I don't get to see it on Twitter, on Gallifrey Base, anywhere he can find to criticize Ian Levine, to mock me, to make me look like to be a lunatic, like a hothead and a schmuck.
Is this in your?
He's my nemesis. I hate him.
So, taking a couple of steps back from it a second, is this a long-standing grudge between the two of you that stems from simply a clash of personalities or a differences of opinion? It's sort of extrapolated over the years. Is that how this has happened?
It became very bad when he made a program about the 6 stories that were cancelled from the supposed season 23. When I went on TV to ITV, I've got to have been cancelled. I was JNT's puppet and spokesperson. That's when it started. He made a program about the 6 missing stories, which he claimed to be Nightmare Fair, The Ultimate Evil, The Ultimate Evil, Mission to Magnus, Yellow Fever, Horrors of Time, and The Children of January. That's what he claimed on the 6 stories. Now, I was a script consultant. I saw every script. I sat in the recordings of every story, and Eric said, was confident. Eric told me he was going to write a story, the final story of that season, to be called Gallifrey, in which he was going to blow Gallifrey up at the end.
Yeah, you told me last time, yeah.
Now, this was fact. I was there. This was fact. Eric said he had to put a dummy story in as a placeholder until he could do this. So he commissioned a story by Michael Feeney Callan called The Children of January, which he had no intention of ever going through with. It was for JNT's sake to be, so he had 6 commissioned stories. Now look, what Eric did at the last minute, so many stories fell through, like The Doctor's Wife, The Space Whale, and all sorts of things that JNT had planned to do. They fell through at the very last minute. Now Eric said, if Children of January is so bad, it's going to fall through at the last minute. And John's going to say, what can we fill it with? I'm going to say, I got a great idea called Gallifrey. And it's too late to stop him doing it. But John wasn't keen on Eric writing stories because he was the script editor.
So from what you're saying, then, there would have been no paperwork for any of this?
No, Gallifrey, of course not. But what there was paperwork on The Children of January to cover Eric's back.
I see.
Never had any intention of using it, ever. It was never going to be made. Richard Bignell wouldn't listen to me. He said it was a liar. And he went ahead and made this stupid story that it was going to happen. And I know he's lying. I was there. He was not there. I was there from the Leisure Hive until Man Walk. Every single story of recording of Doctor Who. No matter how busy I was, even recording.
You were there, yeah.
Recording songs like High Energy.
Ian, I can understand. I can understand, for example, somebody who is officially like Andrew Pixley, somebody who research.
That's a nice, genuine guy. Richard Bignell is a pompous arse. Richard Bignell won't listen to anyone but himself, and he only goes on the written word. He doesn't go on. For instance,
I remember now. So what I'm saying though, just playing devil's advocate for a moment though, somebody who doesn't.
JNT told me in heaven one night that Robert Holmes' storyline was The Five Doctors.
Heaven, the club, yeah.
He came in. I had a VIP.
You were the D. Yeah.
He came free every night with Gary, and they had drinks free. I paid vodka and orange all night. I took care of every night, free. They never paid a penny. Anyway, he said he gets drunk. He got drunk easily, and out came the spilling his true feelings. All came out when he was drunk. And he said, "I've got this script from Robert Holmes, and Sutek's the villain. It's not a script, so it's a storyline." So Sutek was going to be the villain, the Five Doctors. And then JNT went to the Cybermen and the Master and this, that, and the other. And Robert Holmes walked off. He said, "I can't handle this." I was quite happy with Sutek. Anyway, Richard Bignell doesn't believe it because there's no paperwork to see.
See, I can understand, Ian, speaking as somebody who, having spoken to researchers and historians, that perhaps they have lines in the sand where if they're, for example, putting together a documentary or writing a book, particularly if somebody's paying them commission to do something with a specific remit, that they may think, okay, well, in this instance, I'm only going to go to paperwork.
Yeah,
so I can understand up to a point.
But I'm a fucking historian. I was the Doctor Who historian. I wrote the entire history of the show for the Radio Times 20th anniversary special. I wrote the whole article for the Radio Times 20th anniversary. I was called Peter Davison saw me recently. He's called me the Bible. He says, everyone called you the Bible because you knew everything about Doctor Who. Look, you must understand, not everything is written down. Things happen. We're challenging me because Wallace Hussein said that Edge of Destruction was only made because he was late doing Marco Polo. The sets were so complicated that a couple of weeks' time they needed a breather. So David Whittaker wrote a 2-episode filler. Richard Bignell, the paperwork doesn't say this. Levine's lying. Why should I put up with this shit? If I'm there and talk to people, why can't I be believed?
That's what I don't understand. It's one thing to say, okay, I'm looking at paperwork, but to actively suggest that you've made this up, that this is fabrication, I don't understand that at all.
Mission in life is to discredit me.
It does sound personal. I mean, I don't know the gentleman, obviously, but it does sound personal.
Never misses an opportunity to get at me. And that's why he's incurred such hatred from me. He never misses a step, never. And the point is, Andrew Pixley and Stephen James Walker. People like that are lovely people who've been researching and are genuine, kind, understanding people. They're the fucking opposite of Bignell, who's a prick.
I mean, there is such a thing, obviously, as agreeing to disagree, and you know, I think some of us find that harder than others. Ian, I mean, do you find it easy to agree to disagree?
No, not with Bignell. I don't want him in my life. I don't want to know he exists. I just wish he'd disappear off the face of the earth forever.
Obviously, Richard Bignell is allowed a right of reply on any of this. I'm sure you wouldn't mind that either, Ian.
Yeah, but he's going to lie through his teeth.
Well, let's talk about something happier for a moment, because you were recently in the presence of the very gentleman who termed you the Bible, weren't you? So where was this?
That was at the Hammersmith. They showed the Kaiser on the Zani, the Dwas event at Hammersmith. And Eric Sayward, who you'll see on the right there, my dear lifelong friend, who, as you know, we co-wrote. He won't actually publicly admit it, but he's admitted it privately. We co-wrote Attack of the Simon together secretly. Have I told you that story?
You haven't told it to me. It's again, this is one of those popular myths that's out there about you that I haven't a chance to ask you about yet. Did you do that?
Yes, I have to explain how. I will do that later. Right now, that day was Eric phoned me up. He said, "I'd like you to come along." So me and Matthew, my friend Matthew Vaughan, is my closest Doctor Who friend. He comes with me to all these things, pushes my wheelchair, looks after me. And
yeah, you've mentioned Matthew before.
The show, he gets to see my eyes as I do them, as we're halfway through an episode with faults. I'm letting him see everything. In fact, he sat in my house with me before. Was it the day? Yeah, it was this day. It was the night before this day at Hammersmith, and I showed him the Massacre Part 1, and I hadn't got the faults yet. And he sits there so excited. Oh my God, it's like looking at real footage. I would trust him with my life. I would trust him.
Yes.
He works for Parliament, by the way. Works for the House of Parliament.
Yeah.
I trust my life, the best. That's what Doctor Who fans should be. People like Matthew Vaughan, not like Richard Bignell. Unfortunately, Doctor Who fans have bred some cockroaches, vermin, rats, and trolls. Betrayers. I don't know what it is about Doctor Who fandom. Because 9 out of 10 people are lovely, genuinely nice people who I love and would do anything for. But there are verminous people like Benjamin Cook and like Richard Bignell who are absolutely not beneath contempt. I don't want anything.
I know that a lot of us, myself included, can sometimes be a little precious about the things that we think we know and the things that we've been told and believed and incorporated into our own sort of lexicon of Doctor Who, and it's all sat there unchallenged sometimes for decades. Whereas if you were actually there and you heard these things with your own ears, it's a different kettle of fish, isn't it?
I've got 60 years of it. These 12 weren't even spunked out their father's dick when I was doing all this.
Oh God! I mean, here we are in the summer of 2024, and all
uncensored. That's a pretty strong.
Yeah, so it's the summer of 2024, and
people are going to watch this. People are going to watch this.
Yeah,
95% of them are going to love me for what I've done, and 5% of them are going to be sitting at their screen, seething with drool, waiting for an opportunity to criticize me. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to get very heavily criticised by the minority for this podcast.
Should we throw them some red meat? Well, Ian, it's never a dull moment in Doctor Who.
This guy called himself Andrew Brown. He took all my links. No, this was his fake name. He took all my links, so all the 8 different recons that we've constructed, and he plastered them on every site on the internet, everywhere. And gloated, I'm going to get you, Levine, kind of thing. I just gloated in it like it was personal.
So he posted them up to share and to view outside of your Facebook group?
Because, yes, I'd asked everyone in my Facebook group only to watch it in there, not share it, because it cost me a lot of money. And I would share it with the whole world if there weren't trolls around. I'm not going to share it to be criticised, to be told that this looks like Play School or something. I'm not going to do it. If someone said they look like ventriloquist dummies, look, they'll never be as good as the proper episodes, but they look bloody close. And I saw the episodes, and these are the nearest thing you'll ever get. Rachel Britton has publicly said on Facebook, I endorse Ian Levine's We Do Not Feel He's Stolen from a Loose Cannon. We love them to bits. An absolutely beautiful quote, which I put on Twitter, like, shove that up your arse, Richard Bignell.
So I was going to ask you about this. If people don't know what loose cannon is,
okay,
it was...
Let me explain. Loose cannon, about 30 years ago, there were so many missing Doctor Who episodes. Remember the 97 missing now, but when I started looking, there was 153 missing at first. 153. Now, Loose Cannon started taking the missing stories. First one Rick Brindle did was the Macra Terror. And they used telesnaps and different pictures to put on screen while they're talking. They did all of them. By the time they'd finished, and Rick had moved to America, they did all the stories, every single one. Now, look, the recons are the base. I'm not stealing from them. I'm doing it with permission. The recons are the initial, like a slideshow, base to move, to make our animations, to make them move. It's because you watch your Loose Cannon recon, as good as they are, they're just still pictures against the sound.
They were made with a lot of dedication,
love.
Attention to detail, weren't they? And love, yeah.
Love. And in the later ones, I got involved. The Highlanders, we did. Me and my sister Adie made it here. I made the Highlanders for them. You know,
did you really?
Yeah, so I was part of the canon.
I've watched the Loose Cannon one with my children when they were younger. It was the first recon I ever showed them because they loved Jamie so much.
Yeah, well, that was ours. I did only me. We just handed it them, finished. They loved it. We made it in their style. We handed them. My sister Adie used all the time there was a candle or a flame. We made them flicker. We did lots of clever little innovative things on them. But at the end of the day, they are just a slideshow. The recons we're doing, because the technology was not even available a year ago or 6 months ago, but it is now, we're able to make the faces convincingly blink, move, and the guy Christian Darkin, who's working for me, has managed to film himself doing certain movements and then use the AI to put Stephen's face on him and stuff for the movement, so we can have him climbing over the vine up a wall to peering through a window. We're trying to bring them back to life as closely as is humanly possible. Technology will improve further, and as it does, we'll go back and revisit each one and tweak them until I hope in the end, and I hope I'm still alive by then, we've made all of them indistinguishable from the real thing. Mark Ayres wrote me a very vicious email saying they're gruesome, garish, grotesque, and offensive, is what he said. He said that
everybody's entitled to their opinion, Ian, but it depends how it's offered, isn't it?
Dead and manipulating the images of dead actors in a disgusting way. Now, look, what do you think making a cartoon is? The problem with the Celestial Toymaker, they manipulated the image of dead actors so they look like fucking wooden puppets, the Celestial wooden tops. Anyone old enough to know the wooden tops?
That's also a fair point.
Stand what they are. I saw it. They're all saying we'll give it a chance. I fucking sat through it, the BFI. With my hand over my eyes like that.
Everything I see about this production just sounds like it's going to be a car crash. I've already committed to buying it, but my God. Look, Ian, since we last spoke...
No, whoa. You must buy it. Because Derek Hanley reconstructed the pictures and they've done some CGI in it.
Ian, I buy them all. I buy every single release.
Don't not buy it because of the shit crap cartoon. Buy it for the reconstruction with some actual CGI in it. It's worth it for that, and not the shit cartoon. Bloody Russell Minter must have had fucking rocks in his head. Everybody hated the Web of Fear Part 3. Hated it. Paul Hembrick had the audacity to say to me, we don't fill in the gaps for the fans. We make the stories for a new generation in colour. You've got no right to do that. You're handling beloved, classic, wonderful stories. You have no right to reinvent.
It's our cultural heritage, Ian, and you know that better than anybody.
You have no right to reinvent them. I've been saying to him on the phone, very polite, very charming, but he just pushed my buttons too far. He hasn't, as somebody that saved all these Doctor Who's, so you don't have to bloody cartoon animate the Daleks or the Keys of Marinus. So listen to me. Gary Russell took it upon himself to change all the monks in the Abominable Snowmen because he felt it was not diverse enough. 2022 standards against 1967 standards. The point is, I could have lived with that even, but to change Padma Sambavar into a Scooby-Doo kind of voice, just because he didn't like Wolf Morris.
And I can live with if people have got editorial constrictions and asks of them later on in the day. I can sympathise with that. But from the point of view, let me explain where I'm coming from. From the point of view of somebody who committed to buying this line of releases back when they started and wants to build up a collection, now I find myself committed to a line of releases that is actually nothing like the product which I committed to buying at the start. That's what I object to.
Despite his faults, and he had a lot, Dan Hall at least wanted the episodes to look like they really did. Look at the moon base. It's fucking brilliant. The 10th Planet Part 4. They actually capture what was on screen. And now look at the Underwater Menace, where she's just nothing like what was on screen. And look at Abominable Snowman, which is a disgrace.
You see what I'm saying, though, Ian? From my perspective, if this line had launched with the Underwater Menace or with the Celestial Toymaker, I think, well, you know, it's up to me whether I get on. But I can see what this is. It's a new interpretation. It's up to me if I want to part with money for something which isn't as it originally was.
You know what's really fucked up, Dan? Really fucked up is that they're chasing a mythical. Your friend, what was her name?
Sarah
said it's best quote I've heard. They're chasing a mythical audience that doesn't exist. They want young Doctor Who fans in their teens and 20s to go out and buy these, but they don't give a shit about them. Their customers for these Blu-rays of the old stories are all 60-odd Doctor Who, 60-year-old Doctor Who fans. That's who they are. And they're not giving them what they want. They're doing what they stupidly corporately think is their policy. And what sickened me is that Marquez stood on stage repeating the corporate policy, saying, we're not here to make the old missing stories for the fans. We're here to create something new for a new generation. And that's fucking bollocks. Go and make your own fucking new stories of what you like. Don't fuck with the old Doctor Who's.
You know what? I would love to see, in all sincerity, Ian, I'd be quite happy for that team to actually create their own stories, just as you describe. And I'm sure Mark would do a fabulous job of scoring those.
They did things like Dreamland that were great, which is modern cartoon Doctor Who.
You see what I'm saying, though? For Mark to make that statement, which in and of itself is perfectly reasonable, it's still a different product to the one that fans committed to buying way back when.
Art was a fan. He has no right to make that statement, nor call my reconstructions ghoulish, garish, and offensive. He has no right, because thousands of fans have derived pleasure from them. Then the trolls who started plastering me.
I can't defend. I can't defend that. I think that's harsh, cruel, and unnecessary. Would be.
People are now in tears because they can't get to see them anymore because we've removed.
I know.
Them. Now look, now someone started a campaign, a letter writing campaign to BBC Anti-Piracy, to ask them to stop my recons from being made, stop me from doing them, stop them from going on YouTube, even privately, because they just hate them so much, and they're breaching BBC copyright. Now look, these stories do not exist. We've made the pictures and moved to them. BBC haven't got them. They haven't yet animated them. And the soundtracks came from me and people like me, friends of mine, like Richard Landon and James Russell.
You preserved them in the first place.
Yeah, the audio. Do you know what the Randolph tapes are?
These are Now I did know about this. This is one particular gentleman who recorded all of them to the best possible quality. So they existed for decades, didn't they? And we didn't know that they existed.
I used to do it with a jack in the back of the TV. I did that myself. That's why Mum was so good. Anyway, this guy's either called something like Randolph Brown or maybe Derek Randolph or something. We don't know.
Because they own these tapes, but these tapes only came to light in the last 10 or 15 years, didn't they?
Oh, the last 3 years.
Was it 3 years?
What happened is the guy died. We don't know exactly who he is, so we don't know whether it's his parents. Can't he be told of his parents? It'd have to be his brother or sister, or son or daughter. Took the boxes and threw them out with the rubbish. Now, one box, starting with Dalek Master Plan 1, halfway through, missed the first half, going all the way to the moon base, had all the tapes in one big box. A guy found them on a rubbish tip. They were there on a rubbish tip. His son was a Doctor Who fan, so he thought, I'll take them. And that's what happened. We think there was a previous box ending in Dalek Master Plan halfway through Part 1. There may have been a third box after the moon base. We don't know. All we know is that only from the Dalek Master Plan to the moon base, they were found on a rubbish tip, because we believe the other box earlier had already made it into the incinerator. or the, you know, landfill compactor or whatever. But these were found by a miracle, and they were brought to Kaleidoscope, who are no friends of mine. Luckily, some friends of mine got copies before Mark Ayres got his hands on them. Now that Mark Ayres got them, he's very protective of them. But I've got copies of them all, thank God. And they were taped, like I did, by a fan who took them off the air and died. Now, this is the worry. If you had an old Doctor Who film print, no one knew what it was valuable, and you died, and your son or daughter threw them on the skip, we could be losing things that way. The whole world doesn't know the Doctor Who is missing. It
seems almost inevitable, sadly, that that's probably happened.
The Randolph tapes were a miracle. Thank God for them. They are beautiful, beautiful copies. Mark Ayres had the audacity to accuse me online of using his audio recordings. I fucking pissed myself because I got the Randolph tapes before he did. I fucking pissed myself.
Oh, so because these tapes are in Mark's possession?
He had them before him. He's paranoid about anyone having them. He has no idea how many of us have got them.
Mark works extensively with audio, and he's considered to be one of the best in the field, isn't he?
His job, and I used to respect him greatly. But then he took the first Dalek story, which I saved. But if I'd never been born, you wouldn't have that first Dalek story. And he took it, and they chopped it down. Benjamin Cook chopped it down. 1 hour, 15 minutes. So if I hadn't saved it, Mark couldn't have done that. Mark absolutely bastardized and ruined what is a beloved classic story, slurping his music all over. I put on Twitter, and on Facebook, that was like pouring ketchup all over a Kobe steak. I can't bear to watch that colour down. I've no problems with colorizing it. I have problems with them ruining the story. Why can't they take some of the Simon, colorize it, put it out as 100 minutes? Why the fuck they have to chop it down?
To I absolutely loved the Daleks in colour right until that point, about 45 minutes in.
All the beautiful moments leading it, well, it's only the second story, remember? But Ian and Barbara are still coming to terms with the thing. And then that lovely food machine scene and stuff. Chopping all that out, cut away the soul, just cut down the bare bones, and new music and new Dalek voices, which I hated. I love Nicholas Briggs' Dalek voices, but not on the first Dalek story. No way.
I mean, are you sympathetic to the idea, Ian, that people will watch that in colour for the hour and a quarter and then think, God, I really enjoyed that. I wonder what the full one looks like, and then they will go and watch that and savour every minute of it. That it effectively opens the door to the vintage material, to the full material that we love so much.
The fans who discovered Doctor Who with Tom Baker, Peter Davison, or Sylvester McCoy even, have now grown to love the Hartnells and Troughtons as well. They've discovered them for themselves.
I certainly have, yeah.
That Dalek thing was horrible. I could never bear to watch it back. It upset me so much. The reason it upset me is because I saved it. Me. I did not save it to see it ruined like that by Mark Ayres. I did not. I don't want to see it. It hurts me. It hurts my heart there.
So when you hear, though, that some people have enjoyed it, that it's quite popular and sold well, I mean, does that not sweeten the sour a little?
No, it's sold well because the old fan, even I stupidly bought it on Blu-ray. Stupidly. I wish I hadn't, but I did. Because I feel the compulsion to buy every Doctor Who release, no matter what it is.
Why do you think, Ian, that in 2024, 60 years into Doctor Who, that key figures in the fandom, senior figures in the fandom that are very well respected, and in the case of Mark Ayres, Paul Venices, people who are steeped in knowledge and experience, there's a lot of differences of opinion between you all, aren't there? Why do you think that is?
Why I wanted to run through them all and tell you my opinions of them. To recap, Russell Minton, great guy, done a wonderful job with the box set, but very misguided when it comes to the animations and restoring Missing Doctor Who, very misguided. Paul Vaness is a wonderful guy, achieved fantastic things. When I was the one giving episodes back to Beeb, he brought Evil of the Daleks 2 and Faces 1-3 back to my house in Acton to me to give them to the film library, because I was the one that always handed them in.
But Ian, I get the impression that a lot of this conflict actually arises through social media, where everybody's disconnected from one another.
This bit, I'll never get through around it otherwise. Okay. So Paul Vaness is a good guy but misguided and giving too much loyalty to Philip Morris, right? Mark Ayres, great sound guy. He did something for me many years ago. I had a piece of voice I wanted to take off a piece of music, and he lifted it immaculately. He's super talented, but he's so misguided. He's got his head up his own arse. He talks to people like they're children, and he's a headmaster. He's pompous, he's arrogant, and he's not going to shut me up. Loose Cannon found in the early days when they were making their reconstructions, he turned on them and tried to stop them. He got a thing about copyright. He's got this obsession about copyright in his head. The point is, he wouldn't have any of his fucking soundtracks at all if people like me and Richard Landon and David Strong and Graham Holman, if they hadn't taped them off the air, he wouldn't have any. So he should shut his fucking mouth, is what I'm saying. Right, they're the worst ones. Now we've got the best ones. We've got Peter Crocker, who keeps his head down, never says a word to anybody, and is the best restorer of scratches and marks on films. Look what he did to that lion episode, part one of the Crusade.
Yeah.
He cut gouges, and he made them almost invisible. What was there was hardly negligible. He's a genius. Peter Crocker, the whole world owes you a loving. We adore you. You are the best at what you do. You are the nicest man. I love him to bits. Equally, Steve Roberts. I always cared and mattered. I once made a bad mistake when I was doing the videos of Inferno, I do the behind-the-scenes programs, documentaries for Inferno, and I told him to shove it up his arse because he was getting a bit awkward at that time. But realistically, he's a lovely guy. I love Steve Roberts to bits, and although he doesn't really have much to do with the DVDs anymore, he's just in charge of the BBC Library these days, like Sue Molden used to be. So he's a brilliant guy. I love Steve Roberts to bits. Steve, I hope to get to hear me say this about you. I respect you and love you and think you've done a wonderful job over the years. Now we've got Chris Chapman, what a fantastic documentary maker. I saw the Graham Williams documentary about his suicide. I saw it 3 times. Saw it live at the BFI. He's a genius, a very nice guy.
Yeah, we've had Chris on the show. He's really sweet guy, mega talented.
Very, very sweet. I tried to show him my recons. He doesn't want to see him because working for the range, he doesn't want to upset any apple carts. I understand that, but he's polite about it. He's not like Bignell. Using a person like Richard Bignell on the range gives them a bad name, brings them into disrepute, leaves a nasty taste in people's mouths. So he's the worst. He's worse than any of them. Bignell worst, number 1. The public enemy number 1, Bignell. Number 2, Mark Hayes, despite his talent.
I mean, yeah, but Ian, using expressions like public enemy number 1 probably doesn't help.
I don't care. What have I got to lose? They've thrown every bit of shit they can at me. They've had a letter writing campaign to destroy me. They've done everything they can to pull me down. And then he died 3 times. I had a stroke, had sepsis, had bladder cancer. And I don't know how long I'll live. I may not live to be 75. I don't know. I'd like to live to be 90.
What I'm suggesting, though, Ian,
the most important point of this whole podcast, I've said for 20 years, all I want before I die is to see the missing Doctor Who episodes. Now I've finally got to do it. Now I'm seeing them. And all the nice people who appreciate me getting to see them as well. The problem is that certain bastards have gone out of their way to ruin it for me and all the other fans as well. I try to stop me showing them, take them down so they can't see them. And they're all very upset because they did nothing wrong. They want the chance to see them. Lots of people like me who are 60 or 70 years old grew up with Hartnell and they want to see these again because they say that what I've done brings them back to life in a way that no BBC cartoon ever could. My way looks like the real thing and continues to look better with every step. Now, okay, the BBC will never use them. They'll go to waste. At least me and the fans will enjoy them. I will get to see all my missing episodes before I die, as long as they don't pop up tomorrow. You know, I will. I'm getting through them. I've raised enough money to do all 44 of the missing episodes that have never been animated. They're all begging me to do they're all begging me to the Web of Fear Part 3 first. So when I finish my 44, I will do the Web of Fear 3.
Ian, I've said to you a few times. Haven't I, privately, since we last spoke on a podcast, I'm struggling to keep up with all the various plates that you've got spinning. Yeah. But here we are, we're now in the summer of 2024, and all new Doctor Who started on screen. We're sort of halfway through a series of that. But the fandom, the strangest thing is, as expensive and glossy and all out there, all of that is and streaming globally, the fandom has been equally gripped by the saga of you, your lifelong love of Doctor Who, and this huge effort to bring all these episodes back to life. The bumps in the road and the people.
Okay, I am giving the fans of classic Doctor Who, not the new ones. I'm giving the fans what they want. They are seeing the massacre as it was. They're seeing the Dalek Master Plan as it was, as I saw it. And people are talking and moving, and it's much better than a cartoon. It's in a different league. It's not the real thing, but it's close to the real thing. The BBC turned their back on me, and in doing so, they've potentially lost the chance to earn hundreds of thousands of pounds off them. If they had found a way to negotiate with me, and found a way to use these, then imagine they put Dalek Master Plan. Let's imagine that. Say in November, the complete Dalek Master Plan in a Blu-ray box. Because we are actually scaling them to high definition. So imagine they put that on a Blu-ray, all 12 episodes, plus Mission of the Unknown, right? Okay, let's hypothetically say they sell it for 30, because there's a lot of episodes, they do it for £30 a time, right? Okay, £30 a time. Are you with me?
30 quid a pop, yeah.
Yeah. I guarantee it'll do at least 200,000 copies. It's 6 million.
Wow. 6 million.
They would make £6 million off it if they got off their fucking arse and actually swallowed their pride and got together with me. But as everyone says on my Facebook group, even on Twitter, why are they knocking your door down to do it? Well, they're not, because it's personal. They won't be seen to be this difficult thing. I'm too difficult. I'm not.
Ian, it does.
Yeah, you remember Planet of Jazz? We made part 3 and 4 into two, part 3 into the 2 full episodes, 3 and 4. Do you remember?
Of course.
Yeah, we're doing that by AI at the end. We're going to make that into proper movement for the bit missing scenes and everything.
Wow.
So those are 2. Now look, Ed came to me, and I did that for Ed. Richard Bingham been gloating about this. He said the only reason I did it because nobody would work for me, and Ed was the only person I hadn't fallen out with. That's not true. Anyway, but I mean, lots of my friends of mine never ever had a fallout with Peter Crocker. Never. Not my whole life. In fact, he used to work for me on my music videos.
Well, Ian, amongst adults, you can have differences of opinion. You can even have quite fiery exchanges, and it doesn't mean that you're still not friends with those people. It doesn't mean that there's bad blood between adults like that.
You're not thinking. Imagine if the Dalek Master Plan could earn £6 million and multiply that by 10 stories.
No, but Ian, what I'm saying.
Box set 1 with Marco Polo in it. Box set 4 with the Highlanders in it. Box set 5 with Wheel in Space in it. And box set 6 with the Space Pirates in it. And box set 3, they got any fucking box set.
I agree with you completely. But what I'm saying though, Ian, is that
Dalek Master Plan make £6 million of the Dalek Master Plan, and then use it again in box set 3. If they weren't so bloody stubborn, they didn't have the head.
But Ian, this is my point. What I'm saying as a consumer is that I see a lot of passionate, creative, talented people who can't put their heads together to come up with clearly a solution where all of these things could come together to create the ultimate Doctor Who experience and the ultimate archive.
I wrote to Fiona Ball. You see my open letter to the BBC. That's
I have
a quarter of what I wrote to Fiona Ball.
So what moved you to write an open letter to the BBC in the first place?
Fiona Ball is the boss of Russell Minton and the boss of Pembury. She's in charge of that whole area. I wrote to her explaining what I had done in my life, which is part of about a third to a quarter of the letter to Fiona Ball is this open letter to the BBC. That's what I can let people see publicly, explaining what I've done. And then one went on to say about my recons and how they turned their back on them, would never use them. And it's just pure personal malice, because if they weren't so stupid, they could use them and they could make a lot of money out of me, because everybody agrees they do look like the real thing. Now, whatever faults they may have, if I handed them in, if I handed the Massacre Part 3 into them, I showed you a rough cut, didn't I? Yeah, which is wonderful, incredible. He's found a new way around the mouths and the eyes that looks so realistic.
They're getting better all the time.
There's nothing stopping Paul Venesis and Peter Crocker taking it like a piece of ropey film and cleaning up little bits and fixing bits they don't like, using bits, just bit of.
And you've always been clear that you'd be happy for them to do that, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, I want them to come out. I want people to see them as they were. Otherwise, we stop with the Celestial Toymaker and the Abominable Snowman and the Underwater Menace. We stop with crap that people don't want to see. So I'm saying I can solve all your dreams. I can make them all come true. I can give you every missing episode looking like the real thing, and you can fix bits you don't like and tinker with them. And if you don't like a scene, you can say to me, go back and redo this part again. And I will work with them gladly. I won't say who. A famous Doctor Who actor who adores my reconstructions, first of all, was told by the BBC to avoid me because I was toxic. And that's actually libel.
I think you're completely justified in writing an open letter to the BBC. I mean, not simply because of the fact of everything you've been doing, but you are a licence fee payer. You've invested more in multiple ranges in this brand than pretty much anybody else.
We spent 100 grand saving the missing episodes.
Exactly.
100 grand.
So what I find,
100 grand.
I mean, from my perspective, Ian, again, as somebody who is following this by the week, these productions, the reconstructions, all the AI stuff, the animation projects that you've got going, I'm following it all as eagerly as I can. There's so much, but the reception, the reception to it, though, Ian, has been so overwhelmingly positive and so ecstatic. People, the nicest thing is Nigel Robinson. You know who he is? He's the guy. He's a historian as well, right? He's certainly a writer. Adapted some of the Target books.
He wrote a destruction. He was the editor of Target books for years. The editor he was in charge of Doctor Who range. That's who he was. He wrote a wonderful thing, saying that I brought his childhood back, and for the first time since 1965, he was sitting down for Christmas dinner and watching The Feast of Stephen. His letter made me cry. It was so emotive.
No, I can say that must be so gratifying.
Said nobody has ever restored these looking as much like the originals as these do. He says cartoons can't come close to this.